Hello again, everybody. I just thought that I'd go over a few things about this BSA A65 of mine, as I've owned it and made videos about it and ridden it and worked on it. Certain things have cropped up, and people ask questions that perhaps I haven't answered fully in one go, and I thought that perhaps I'd cover, especially the issues that I've had with it, with the misfire and the ignitions and so on. I'm going to try and cover this from the beginning, really, if I can remember it all. I never use a script or anything. I might think about what I'm going to say, and then I just go ahead and do it, and this is just the same as all the others. But when I bought the bike, I got it at a good price, and well, the main reason was that the owner who sold it to me described it. He said, really, he said, it's a non-runner. He said, I have had it going, he said, and spitting and popping, and he said, I can't really sort of say it's a runner. There's things that need doing to it. So we agreed a price, and I bought it, and it looked absolutely stunning. He emailed me photos of it first of all, and I thought, God, that looks great. Even as a non-runner, it's got to be worth that sort of money. So I don't very often do it, but I took a gamble, I bought it, and I've turned out happy with it, but it has been a battle. So let's start at the beginning, if I can remember. Obviously it came here, and I did a couple of hours work on it and checked a few things over, and I think I established that there appeared to be sparks at the plugs and so on, and I thought, well, let's try and start it, and it did what the owner said it had been doing with him. Really, there was a lot of kicking back and spitting and spluttering, or it might go on one cylinder but not both, and it was a puzzle, because at that time, as it came when I bought it, it had what seemed to be a pretty new Payson electronic ignition on it. Everything looked fine. The carburettor appeared to be quite new, or new even. Everything looked pretty fresh and recent on it, and it looked as if a nice job had been done at it. So I was a little bit puzzled myself, and various timing adjustments and playing with the carburettor and whatever. Nothing did much for it, but I then noticed that I think we only had something like around about 11.5 volts in the battery. So I did what I often do in that sort of situation and got the battery charger out and connected it up, and made sure that we had around about 13 volts or so with the battery charger on the battery. That didn't make anything any better, and there was a lot of head scratching and other faffing around done, but I got nowhere with it really like that. So I decided, well, for what difference it might make, and I did actually recall one BSA A65 that had, I think it was a Boyer electronic ignition on that one, where the battery voltage was certainly below 12, and there was all sorts of difficulties in getting it started, and putting a battery charger on that one hadn't really worked. But as soon as I put a new battery on it, everything suddenly came all right. So I thought, oh, I remembered that. So I put a new battery on this one, and sure enough, things got a lot better, and got the engine started. I was able to strobe the ignition timing and everything, and a couple of other little checks and jobs done, and it was actually time to go and have a ride on it and start using it a bit. And it did appear to go pretty well, actually, and I took a few rides on it, and I took my wife on the back of it, and we went all around the dam and down the Devil's Staircase, that sort of way. I think it was about a 50-mile round trip. Everything seemed to be okay. Then soon after that, we got this misfiring on the right-hand cylinder occasionally, which could be cured instantly by changing the plug or cleaning the plug, or whichever, and off you'd go again. But this seemed to get more and more frequent, and the sort of time or mileage it took for the fault to sort of manifest itself seemed to get less and less, down to the point where you could almost draw a line in the road on my 15-mile test circuit that I often use, and you could sort of come around a corner, and I could tell myself it's going to start misfiring any moment, and sure enough it would. Anyway, On the electronic ignition it did this a few times, and then the last time it not only lost a cylinder, as I was staggering along with it as I had done before to try and get home, all of a sudden it stopped as if the ignition had been switched off, and that was it. That was the end of the electronic ignition, and I went on and fitted points to it. But thinking back, I think that possibly I've got a theory that maybe the plug was getting oiled on the right hand side, and the fact that the oil was snuffing the plug out, and at that time the coil, which is actually still behind the side panel, the one that the electronic ignition used, is one coil with two outlets. On the twin like this you'd get a wasted spark because both plugs actually sparked at the same time, but twice as often as they needed to. And I think perhaps one plug getting snuffed out perhaps put some sort of strain on the electronic ignition. I don't really know how these things work, but anyway, the whole thing just stopped dead and there were no more sparks. So I thought, well, if this was on point and one side oiled up, chances are I could probably still get home with the other side running. So and I'm not a great fan of electronic ignitions, in case you didn't know, but I put the point system back on it, and off we went again, firing on 2 cylinders. Lovely. I thought, that'll sort it out. Must have been something to do with the electronic ignition breaking down, but unfortunately it wasn't, because the misfire still lurked even with the points. And I did a bit of work battling it and scratching my head over it, and in the end, it was last summer, I think we were about halfway through the summer, and I just had enough really. I wanted to enjoy the bikes because we don't get particularly long summers, so I just decided to leave it alone and use a couple of the other bikes I got as and when, and pretty much forgot about it until a couple of weeks ago actually, and I dug it out again and thought I'd have another go at it. So obvious sort of things to do. First of all, I clean the plugs, change the plugs. I did both. I changed the plug cap. I changed a coil, but in my haste, initially I hadn't realised that the coil that I picked up that looked the same as the others wasn't actually a 12 volt coil, but it was a 6. But it ran on both cylinders for a little while, and then it played up and went back onto one. So I was quite fed up by then. I'd also, just prior to that, I took the cylinder head off to see if I could find out why the spark plug was oiling, and I did actually see what appeared to be evidence of a slight oil leak across from the pushrod tunnel into the right hand cylinder, and one side of the crown of the piston on the right pot was actually shiny, where obviously it had been washed by a bit of oil and carbon hadn't been able to stick to it. So that was solid evidence to me that there was oil getting in there and possibly onto the plug. So anyway, I dealt with the head gasket issue and put it all back together again and started it up, went for a ride, but the misfire reared its head, and that's when I left the electronic ignition coils went out of the equation when the electronic ignition was removed. I put a pair of 12 volt ordinary coils that look like old car coils, if you like, but smaller, on. As soon as I fitted the points, a new pair of 12 volt coils, but still had the misfire jumping in. That was when I then decided to try another coil for the right hand side and got mixed up and fitted the 6 volt. So there we are, that clears that one up, I hope. And the engine ran for a short while and then misfired again. Soon after that I realised, I had a look and realised what I'd done, and that it was a 6 volt coil, but I had another new 12 volt coil to hand, and I fitted that, but I also fitted a sort of unknown random Bosch spark plug, and I'd already switched to what are known as protruded or long-nosed electrode spark plugs, because they can be helpful in situations where you get oiling problems. So I got the NGKs out. I think I changed from 8s to 6s, and that didn't really help. And then I got this random Bosch spark plug and put that in. I don't even know what what it compares to in NGK speak or champion speak or anything, but it's in there and it seems to be working. And since I fitted the 12-volt coil, the misfire has gone as well. So did the head gasket job stop the oiling and stop it misfiring? Well, no, it didn't, because I know that I had the misfire after that, but changing the coil sorted it. But having changed the coil, it's also doing higher mileages now and not misfiring than when it was oiling up. And I can't quite decide 100% for myself whether I fixed a very, very slight oil leak across the cylinder head gasket, which I think I have, and stopped oil going onto the spark plug, or was the plug getting oiled as a result of the spark being lost and the cylinder not firing but still turning and getting fuel in and pumping oil up and down or whatever. I don't know, but for anyone who might still be watching, sorry I've waffled on a bit about this one, but I've been trying to remember things in the order that they happened and try sort of explain the logic behind what I did and everything, and it would appear to me, I think summing up, I've got to say there was an oil leak from the head gasket, definitely, because I had that shiny area on the piston crown which was getting washed in oil. The oil consumption I can't even call consumption. Likewise, there's barely ever any smoke at all comes out the exhaust, so and what little smoke I do occasionally see is pretty equal on both sides. So I really can't say definitively what fixed it, but in doing the head gasket job and fitting what eventually turned out to be another new 12-volt coil on the right hand side and changing to the Bosch spark plug, take your pick of any of those, but it's fixed now. And that's about all I can tell you folks about that. Wish I could be more informative and more precise and more sort of definite as to what it was that actually fixed it in the end, but I'm just happy that it's going, and if any of that stuff helps anybody else in any way, shape or form, like I say, I think I was fighting a slight oil leak across the head gasket and a duff coil at the same time. It's funny how these things can sort of happen together and muddy the waters a bit when you're looking for clues and scratching your head, but I think that's what happened here. And just to quickly answer some other comments and questions, a few people have remarked and asked me about the tank. Now, that shape of tank was actually fitted to some BSA A65s, and I've seen Firebird scramblers that I've had here that have had that shape of tank. Whether they might have been a slightly bigger tank or whatever, I don't know, because a lot of people comment on the gap there. These tanks were also fitted to some 250 Starfires and the 441 Shooting Star single cylinder bikes, so it may even be that of the three machines, the Starfire, the 441 Shooting Star and the A65s that had these tanks, perhaps there were slight and subtle differences in the tanks, although they looked basically the same. I don't know, I'm just speculating. Maybe this is a tank off one of the smaller machines, I don't know, or perhaps all of them that had this shaped tank had that gap there. I don't know. That's the best I can do with that one. But the main thing about it is that finally I've got a bike that I enjoy riding and like the look of, that actually seems to be going pretty well. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing of all. So thanks for watching.